Greetings, friends! It's cold outside, and at this time of year, I like to drink something warm. Actually, even when it's warm, I like to drink something warm, but that's just me. I like tea, and another thing that I've started drinking here recently is bone broth, and it's quickly becoming one of my favorite things to drink. It's really good.
So this is what he likes to drink.
I know it doesn't look that great, but it is.
Chicken feet and all.
Sure is. Straight from our chickens. There was a little bit of processing involved, but
it's chicken feet.
It's chicken feet. And it sure is yummy. Actually, during my gallbladder surgery recovery, that was actually something that was recommended for me to drink is bone broth, and I've been drinking a lot of it and absolutely loving it. I'm like, why hasn't this been around in my life more often? Because it's good and actually makes me feel stronger.
Well, one of our friends says in some ancient civilization or whatever, they would say that chicken soup or chicken broth can raise the dead. So there's something to the, you know, chicken soup all you had whenever you were sick. Bone broth. It's really good for you.
And one of the things that I have been learning, and I didn't know this before, is the difference between stock and broth. Right here we have broth, and what's the difference between the two?
Broth is cooked a lot longer, so you're breaking down those bones and all the cartilage and the gelatin that's in there and all that good stuff that's good for all of us. That's the difference. And chicken stock, it's still, you're cooking the bones, but not as long, so you're not getting as many benefits from them. Okay, this is creepy because it looks like a little hand sticking out of here. That looks like a thumb and some fingers, but it's really just a chicken foot.
We promise. And with both stock and broth, you can use almost any animal, but we use either fish, beef, duck, or in this case, chicken. So, outside of drinking it, what are all the other different ways that you can use broth? Because I know back in even some of the ancestral cultures and traditional dishes that people use broth in so many different ways.
Well, I mean, soup is definitely one of the big ways you can use it. And that's what I'm going to make for dinner tonight.
In addition to soup, I think you can use you can use broth to make gravies and
well, yeah,
other things
anything
like
that
that.
you can replace, you know, with your water. You can use it in your rice if you want to make rice or grits or, you know, anything like that. Any kind of sauces, you can use your bone broth.
And you used some from duck not too long ago. And you put it in, I think the rice, was it, or quinoa, something like that.
Yeah.
And it was rice. It was rice, and it was absolutely fantastic. The rice without it was okay, but then you put that in there from the broth, and it took it to a whole nother level of goodness. Let me tell you.
Oh, well, I'm glad you enjoyed it. And another thing about broth is that whenever you cook it low and slow, you get all the nutrients out of the bones. So look, there's a bone right here, beef bone. You see where it's been eaten into, like, and it just breaks apart like this. So you're getting so much more nutrients out of the bones that you wouldn't normally get from just eating meat, but you get it from bone broth.
And I've always been a health guy, so it's like, if it's good for me, I'll consume it. You can talk me into consuming it. This not only is good for you, it also tastes good, as I just mentioned, and there's a lot of health benefits to it. And from all the different minerals that are in here, from the calcium, the phosphorus, all of that you're getting here. And cooking it in broth form allows your body to more easily process and absorb those nutrients. And a benefit to doing your own broth is with some of like the broth from like restaurants and some of the packaged ones, they can have things like MSG in them, as well as artificial meat flavoring, and you don't want that. So when you make your own, you know exactly what is in it. And Lacie has made it, and we know what's in it.
And it's real.
It's real and real good.
Such a dork.
Oh, also forgot, magnesium is also another one that is that you can get from the bone broth. And a lot of people right now are really deficient in magnesium. So you start making some bone broth, and you're going to feel a lot better, a lot stronger, and get your magnesium in too. Any more you want to tell us about bone broth?
I don't know. It's just good. And it's good for you.
I'll tell you one other thing. I've learned a lot from the Weston A. Price, and they've had a number of episodes and articles about broth as well as so many other things.
Tons of stuff.
And you'll learn a lot about so many different things related to health. Our family follows a lot of the ancestral and biblical health principles, and Weston A. Price, they teach a lot of the different ancestral diets and nutritional information, and you can find a plethora of information. As a member of their organization, you can learn even more and even have access to that. And we'll leave their information in the show notes below. And speaking of them, they have a really good podcast that
Certainly do.
we all consume on a regular basis. And here, not too long ago, the host of that show, Hilda Labrador, was actually here on our homestead. We did a video with her, and if you haven't seen that video, make sure you check it out. But I also had this distinct opportunity of being on that show, on that podcast, and it is going to be coming out sometime in February. So make sure you check it out. I'll provide that information in the show notes below as well.
Yep.
But back to bone broth. How in the world do you make this stuff?
One of my favorite things about bone broth is how easy it is to make. I like starting out with beef bones, and I get those from our local farm, grass-fed beef, and take those out of the freezer, put them on a pan, and I roast them at 400 degrees for at least an hour. And when those are nice and sizzly, I take them out of there, and then you also have like rendered beef fat too out of that, and I save that and use that to cook with. But I take them, transfer them to my pot along with my other bones. If I have roasted a chicken, or just throw in some chicken feet, throw those in on top, put my water in, cut up my vegetables. I normally do carrots, celery, and onions. Sometimes I throw in some garlic and throw in some spices like black pepper, thyme, and a few bay leaves there at the end. Once I have everything in the pot filled up with water, all my herbs and spices in, all I do is put on the lid and bring it up to a simmer and let it simmer for at least 12 hours, but I normally like to do 24 to 48.
And one of the things that I like about it as you're cooking it during that time is the aromatic smell. It is aromatically pleasing during the whole cooking process. But it's also almost like it's teasing me at the same time, because it's like, it's not ready yet, Mike. You gotta let it cook more. It's not ready yet. But then as it starts to get ready, then I just start gathering some here and there.
Our
and
house
enjoying
is
it.
meat flavored, you
Yeah.
know?
That's like the best flavor ever. That's the best smell ever. Like there, it's like, meat.
Oh. So after I've let it cook for a good like 24 hours, I'll then start taking some of the broth out and using that in rice or make soup. But this time I just left this pot on the stove at a really low temperature, and whenever I would use some out, I just poured more water in and I just let it cook and stay on the stove for, how long did I leave it? I think maybe like 2 weeks. It just sat there and stayed hot on the stove, and so I could take it out and use it for all sorts of things. And like I showed you, the bones were so brittle they will just break like this. So all of this minerals in these bones are breaking down, and it's fortifying your food. You don't need all the supplementation of other stuff. You can get it from your food.
Yeah, and I used to be a bodybuilder and in the health industry in various ways, and took a lot of different supplements. But one of the things that I have learned through Weston A. Price and just learning to have this lifestyle that we have here on the homestead is that you can get a lot of the nutrients that your body needs from the food if we start using it the way that we should. Start using our meats from nose to tail.
Yep.
Like right here, there's so many different supplements that people would be purchasing out in the store somewhere when we could just be getting it from right here.
When you buy it from the store, your body does not absorb it like it would naturally. This is coming like all in one natural package like God intended us to eat. So we are getting all of these things are working together for our body to absorb, not isolating some kind of mineral or nutrient and then artificially adding it back into our diet.
Yeah, and I mentioned earlier about magnesium being in here, phosphorus being in here, and calcium in here, but you could also be getting glucosamine, which is also good for your joints from the bone broth here, as well as possibly CLA as well.
Yeah, conjugated little acid.
So a number of different things here.
Exactly. So that's why we love bone broth so much.
So this is just a little bit left from this pot, and we need to strain this. We need to start some more.
We do need to start some more.
Because I want to smell it some more, and I want to eat some more. So that would be great. I always said I like the smell of it, but I also think it would be a really neat idea if somebody made like some meat flavored lollipops.
Meat lollipops
again. Perfect.
Do you know how many
great.
years
Somebody needs to come up with that business. Make
that he needs a meat lollipop. It's really interesting.
Yeah, I'm not really a sugary guy, but I love the flavor of meat. So if somebody made me some meat lollipops, those would be great. All right, back to broth.
I'm gonna have to figure out how to make you some bone broth lollipops.
If you froze them or something, they'd be like meat popsicles.
That just sounds weird. Oh, I do want to mention that I left this on the stove for like 2 weeks cooking, but I know other people that'll actually leave it in their crock pot, and they'll just let bones cook down, and they'll take it out and put more water in, but then they'll just put new bones in there too, and just keep it going and take it out as they need it. That's another option too. Okay, so we're gonna get the last of this broth out of here. And I do want to mention another way is you can make it in an Instapot as well in less time. But I like to make larger quantities because my family eats a lot. And so I just make it in a big stock pot instead of my Instapot. Takes longer, but that's okay. And one thing that you can do with the bones, since they're so brittle, is you can give them to your dogs and your cats. Shoot, the chickens would probably love these. All this stuff the chickens would eat. So you won't waste anything. Or you can just throw in your compost pile. Either way, it'll break down really fast.
And one of the things that the Native Americans did, and they did nose to tail in their lifestyle as well, is they would grind up the bones into powder and consume them.
Well, and look, I mean, you cook them long enough, and you definitely, okay, here we go. Tastes a little grainy.
I gotta try it. I don't think I've tried this before. Go ahead. May I have some?
Here you go.
It's not terrible. Different.
No, and I mean,
I eat bones. I'm tough. And another thing is, if you have older animals that maybe their meat isn't the most delicate, because as a lot of animals get older, the meat gets tougher. So those could be meat that just goes straight into the stew pot after you process it, of course.
Yeah.
And then you can just have all of that in some type of stew, or actually you can feed some of this to your animals to make sure that they get some of the nutrients that they need as well. Your meat eating ones,
right.
Of course.
So the last little bit of our bone broth, and look how rich that looks. And I refilled my pot with water too. So it's not just real thin. This is not nice, good, mineral-rich broth. Do you need some water?
Hello, Micah. You want some broth in there instead of some water? Water's good, but you can have some broth too. Go ahead and drink that whole pot there, buddy. He may not want to drink some, but he's consumed it whether he knows it or not.
That's right.
It's bone broth.
Yep, that is. That's one crazy little guy, but I love him.
Yes, we do love him. And y'all do too. It's so sweet how y'all talk about Micah. And they're like, can he come help me on my farm?
He's a good little helper.
He is a good helper.
I don't know if I'm willing to lend him out though.
Well, I'm done with straining my bone broth. So I'm going to move on to making dinner. I'm going to make a butternut squash soup tonight. So I hope you like it. If I tell you that it has bone broth in it, will you actually eat it?
Yeah, I definitely would eat it. Please save me some to drink though. I love drinking it, especially warm bone broth. Yummy.
Well, I'm in the process of making you a couple more gallons. So do you think that'll be okay?
Yep. Now that sure does sound good to me. Make some more yummy goodness that we can add for me to drink, to our soups, dishes, and more.
That's what I need to call it. Just yummy goodness.
Yep. You also make some blueberry yummies. That's close to that, but we'll just call this yummy goodness. Well, that's it for now. Can't wait to have some of that yummy goodness. But make sure you stay tuned. And also, as I mentioned earlier, feel free to check out that podcast as well as the Weston A. Price website in the show notes below. It's super exciting to be on that podcast. So make sure you check it out, because on there I'm talking about connecting with your food, connecting with the land, and connecting more to one another. So make sure you check it out.
All things we talk about right here, but
That's
even
it.
more in depth.
That's right.